Okay, this is the intro for the podcast.
Well, without further ado, welcome back to the Silver Screen Fiends podcast. I'm your host, Sam. I may not have Joe and Blake this week, but I have two gentlemen that can fit the bill just fine. We have Brian, who is one of my oldest friends, one of my dearest friends, who I've known you how long now? Like 15 years?
At least half my life, I would think, right?
At least, yeah, I would say half our lives. Not combined, though, but half our lives. And he is the CEO of XP Geek.
Jesus.
No, I'm kidding. fun little
I
history
have
there.
I have enough index cards to build a house with, or not index cards, business cards. But yeah.
Yeah. So, no, on a serious note, he streams at Brinkle, twitch.tv/Brinkle. I can provide links later. And he is an all-around great man, great family man. You would call him a family guy, actually, because that's what he is. He's a great family guy. We are also joined by another good friend. He is a freelancer, a freelance journalist.
Was a freelancer.
Was former freelancer. And you can see him in such publications as StarWarsSucks.com. Brian has got... No, I'm kidding. He's been in everything. He's been in Forbes, Yahoo, Variety, Kotaku. Not a fan of Kotaku. Rolling Stone, PC Gamer. But now you can find him at... Do I have this right? Reviewed.com?
Yeah. USA Today's Reviewed.com.
There you go. That is where you can find the man.
He's also a published author.
Yes. Oh, you just had that lying around.
It's on my chair next to me. It's
awesome.
One of my 2 copies because I forgot to.
That's true. He has written a book. And we are joined by Alex Kane. So, what is, as the kids say, what is up, guys? How are you? You having a good time? We're about to have a good time.
I'm just here to discuss the fall of cinema.
The fall.
Well, you're gonna have to look elsewhere, my friend, because we're talking about a very underrated movie today. I don't know exactly how we got into this conversation. I guess we were just talking about favorite movies, and we happened to bring up St. Elmo's Fire. And right, I think we were just chatting on Xbox one day.
I think,
yeah,
we were like brainstorming like movies that we could like watch for fun sometime, and we were just like throwing out random titles, like endless lists of movie titles, and somehow we got probably on the topic of like teen movies or 80s movies, and I said St. Elmo's Fire, and I think you like lit up, or maybe you said St. Elmo's Fire and I lit up, and we were like, oh wait, that movie is like, everybody hates it, but like, and yet, right? Like,
right. And yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It is one of those interesting things where usually I'm in agreement with unanimous opinion, but this one I never understood. I mean, I guess because like, well, so it's a coming of age movie, but right in the heart of the 80s, 1985. And so I guess there was like a lot of competition at the time, and when you had other movies in the same realm that were like box office smashes, like 16 Candles or Pretty in Pink, it's kind of like, oh, then they're saying Elmo's Fire. Like, who fucking cares? It's not really, especially because
at the same time as Breakfast Club, right, or around the same time with some of the same people.
Around the same time as Breakfast Club, yeah.
Yeah.
So I can understand why it was like mixed critically, but that's a shame because like it's a genuinely good movie, and I don't know if it's attained any sort of cult status. I don't think so. I know it has like a small following, but other than that, I think it's a great movie for sure. But yeah, St. Elmo's Fire. Brian, we got Brian to watch it, so
I've seen it twice in the past few weeks.
So this will be interesting. We'll have opinions coming from 2 people who adore it and 1 person who doesn't side with Kirby at all.
Kirby needs to chill,
and I feel you on that. So yeah, right in the heart of the 80s, 1985, got a little director, Joel Schumacher. You might know him from things that aren't the St. Elmo's Fire. Yeah, it's interesting. He's done Batman, The Lost Boys. So when he like signed on for this project, it was kind of interesting because he wasn't really doing anything like this. But I think that his like dark sense of twisted reality and like kind of like bringing in black comedy made it what it was. So Joel Schumacher, who we actually lost just last year, and I forget if it was due to COVID or what happened, but yeah, I mean that was a real hit because as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh shit, like fucking St. Elmo's Fire. But I mean, definitely did other good stuff for sure. But yeah, so interesting directorial choice. I'm not sure of the history of that, but we have his coming of age story about recent graduates from Georgetown University, and it stars the Brat Pack, which at the time consisted of Judd Nelson, Ali Sheedy, Molly Ringwald. Molly's not in this movie, but as far as the Brat Pack in general, included like Emilio Estevez, Rob Lowe, Demi Moore, just this whole conglomerate of kids who became the amalgamation of what teens wanted to be at the time, like kind of these rebellious auteurs of their generation, so to speak, with kind of like they're almost bohemian in a sense. Like they're just discovering things, but they're also reckless in nature. So this one specifically, though, has Rob Lowe, Demi Moore, Emilio Estevez, Ali Sheedy, Judd Nelson, Mare Winningham, who I haven't seen her in anything else really.
When I was looking up stuff about the movie, I think she was like big in TV at that time, but I don't know about
possibly,
movies.
yeah.
Yeah.
Then we also have Andrew McCarthy, who recently came out with a book, which I would love to read at some point. But we also have Andy McDowell, and yeah, I guess we could kind of just hop into it. We could kind of just like go through the plot and whatever, and talk about wherever floats our boat. So the movie starts on a very Pixar level, I like to put it, because it shows all of them graduating from school, and then it fast forwards, I think, like a couple months, and a bunch of them are at the hospital because they're waiting to hear about how critical the condition is of their two friends, Wendy and Billy, who are Mare Winningham and Rob Lowe, respectively. And so right here, it's kind of established that Billy is not a great person. He's very reckless. He clearly is still hanging on to college times. But that is way more apparent as the story progresses. Like they just scratch the surface of that here. So then you see each of their characters blossom into what they are throughout the rest of the movie pretty quickly. So you have Alec Newberry, played by Judd Nelson, who is this, I guess what specifically is he working for the senator? Is he like a poller? I'm not sure of his actual job title.
I don't remember the title, but he was working for the Democratic senator.
Yes. So
he starts off working for like one politician and then swaps from a Democrat to a Republican. Like,
yes.
That's like part of the movie's sort of
so
transitional phase.
So you can see Alec comes across as this preppy guy, and he tries to use his poll at the senator's office to find out information about Wendy and Billy.
He's the dad of the group.
And he's like, yeah, I'm the senator, like gives him his card. Anytime you need anything, just contact me. Then you have his girlfriend, Leslie, played by Ali Sheedy, who just turned 59, I think a couple days ago, and still looks great for her age. I mean, they all look pretty good for their age. Judd Nelson looks like he stuck a wet finger in an electrical socket, but like
that's so mean.
But the guy, no, I'm kidding. No, it's because his hair. Like he makes.
No, I know, I get it.
But
if you look at like all of them, like who aged the best, you can tell who did and who didn't.
Yeah, no, they're a bunch of good looking people for sure. And then so Ali Sheedy is with Alec, and it's kind of. it's at first you're not sure how long they've been together, but then it becomes clear that it hasn't been that long, which plays into a pretty big event later in the movie we'll get to. Then you have Kevin, played by Andrew McCarthy, who is the nihilistic writer. He just at some point wants to catch a break getting his writings and columns, but like doesn't know what he actually wants from life and is constantly asking that question throughout the movie. That's a trope of the movie. Then we have Jules, played by Demi Moore, who Brian said this and I totally agree. You don't even recognize her.
It's crazy. It really is crazy.
Because she was quite literally a baby.
Like what I picture like Demi Moore looking like in my head is not what she looks like in that movie. It's like it's very wild.
Yeah. So Demi Moore plays Jules, who is not as well, you know what? Her and Billy have striking parallels in their characters because they're both reckless in various ways. And Jules, at first, comes across like she might be able to handle it better, but you can tell that she really has some mental stuff going on throughout the movie until like quite literally way later in the movie. But we'll get into that. And then you have Kirby, played by Emilio Estevez, who is, man, when they were writing this character, it is cringe because he's essentially a stalker. And when they're at the hospital, he runs into this woman named Dale Bieberman, who he's basically been in love with since they went out on one date a long time ago and watched a Woody Allen movie. And honestly, from their interactions, it doesn't even seem like she remembers him that well. And so it kind of plays into his psychosis throughout the movie. But that is a one wild story arc. And then you have Wendy, Mare Winningham, along with Billy, Rob Lowe, who were both involved in the car wreck. It's implied that he was drunk driving and got them both in the car accident. So after that happens, you find out they're okay. Billy gets hauled off in a cop car, and then that's when Kirby was talking with Dale, and then the music play. You know that song. we get a little taste of one of the best songs ever, St. Elmo's Fire, quote unquote, a man in motion. And it's interesting because that song, I'm pretty sure, was used for 2 movies simultaneously. It was John Parr wrote the song for St. Elmo's Fire, but it was also used in Man in Motion, which I think was a documentary about shit. I forget the subject matter. Some guy in a wheelchair. I think
an Olympian.
Yeah, an Olympian in a wheelchair. Something like that.
Paralympic Games gold medalist, Canadian wheelchair athlete Rick Hansen.
Right. So it's interesting the duality that the song plays when you compare them with their respective movies. Because like St. Elmo's Fire, it's talking about a coming of age. The first lines are literally growing up. You don't see the writing on the wall. And then you get later into the song, and then it's more about just having the courage to stand up and do that thing, and that's when the man in motion aspect comes into play. But yeah, that song slaps. I fucking love it, and I'm putting it at the end of this goddamn episode. Anyway, so we segue into their college hangout, which, ironically enough, is St. Elmo's Bar. And Brian was upset to see that the bar does not indeed set on fire.
I wouldn't say I was upset. I would say I was shocked.
You were crying.
So you guys had both seen the movie before a few weeks ago. I had never seen it, and I've watched it twice since. And so the only thing I knew, right, is I knew it was directed by Joel Schumacher, who all I had known previously about was Bat Nipples from Batman and Robin. And I knew that it was like a coming of age teen drama, and the movie was called St. Elmo's Fire. I didn't know anything else besides, like some of the people in the cast. And so just going in, knowing the title of that, I thought, a teen drama. There's this cast of characters. They're going to have some kind of, fallout among the group, and then the St. Elmo's fire, whatever that place is going to catch on fire, and then that is going to bring them back together as a unit. And 3/4 of the way through the movie, it became clear that the bar was not catching on fire, and that was a pretty big twist for me.
Yeah, like a literal interpretation. Although it would have been interesting if the movie panned out. Like, you guys ever see Miracle Mile?
No.
I don't think so.
Well, it's a movie that it's basically like the Doki Doki Literature Club thing. It's like it presents itself as one thing, and then it just turns into something completely different. So that would have been funny to see that here. But so they go into the not on fire St. Elmo's bar.
Shocking.
And you find out that Billy is further fucking up his life. You find out he's married while womanizing in the bar.
Married with a kid.
Married with a kid, exactly. And he's just schmoozing it on up with a girl, and Alec comes over, and he finds out that Billy was fired from the job Alec just got him. And he takes him into the bathroom, he roughs him up, he gives him a swirly in the toilet, and then like a bunch of the other guys follow behind to see what's going on. And this is like already setting the scene for what each group member, where they fall into place, like who plays who. Like Brian, you said earlier, Alex sort of the dad, and that's kind of what ends up happening. He ends up trying to be the guiding force of the friendship, and especially with Billy, who he basically has to treat like a child because he will not take care of his own child, and he knows that he's just fucking up. So then they have that cringy chant that Brian loves.
So it's the worst.
I could just see Brian's face. Like, I could look into his soul, the disappointment of the chant. Because, spoiler alert, a lot in this movie is cringe because it was a product of its time. So, like, the chanting of, like, a booga, 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 like, no one is doing that these days. Yeah. I mean, we do stupid shit, but, like, that kind of, like, if you took what we were doing now is, like, the equivalent of what they deemed socially unacceptable at that time. So it's like interesting to see how it transcends.
But like the funny thing is, so like I looked up, after watching it, I looked up a lot of trivia about it because I was interested just, how these people were casted and how this movie came about when it was made. And one of the things I read was that the Booga Booga chant was actually not in the script. And later on, they interviewed Rob Lowe and they were like, well, where did that come from? And that actually came from like when fans saw them filming the movie and they would like start like talking about amongst themselves and laughing in the corner. Mm-hmm. So like the cast reappropriated that sound as making fun of like the onlookers of them like filming the movie. So that's from a few feet away that's what that like chitter chatter sounded like to them, and they were doing it as like to make fun of that, which is like weird. I can't imagine that like people snickering and talking amongst themselves in the background would sound like booga booga, but I mean, that was what he said. So
that's interesting too, because like back then they were stars.
Yeah.
Although this is kind of like they were getting big, but I think like some of them, this movie had actually perpetuated that. So, but that's interesting. I
just think it's weird. Like the sound doesn't match what the explanation. Like I just don't feel like people like talking and laughing sounds like booga booga, but like I mean that's the story behind it.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah, and the where the Brat Pack like name comes from for all these young actors is like, I think it's a New York Magazine profile by a guy named like David Brum, I believe his name was, and he basically he like went out to bars where like, so Rob Lowe, Estevez, and Judd Nelson would be buddies hanging out sort of after, sort of riding the wave of their fame and sort of bathing in the glow of the attention. And so a lot of these people apparently, they there was a clique, that sort of formed from it, and
Right.
the core group was really like Rob Lowe coming from The Outsiders, Judd Nelson from the Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire, and then Estevez, being in both of those two like flagship movies. But yeah, and then so you have sort of the outsiders who, like Andrew McCarthy, his name is only mentioned in the Brat Pack article that coined that term like one time, like an offhand reference to him. So, and then Mara Winningham, I think she was really only in St. Elmo's, and so then other people sort of get pulled into that like Kiefer Sutherland because he was in the Lost Boys, I guess, and people like John Cusack because of the various. I think he was in 16 Candles is like an extra practically or something like that, and then he was in like later 80s films. But a lot of that comes from Rob Lowe and Nelson and Estevez just kind of hanging out and being like, yeah, we're stars. And McCarthy did that on sort of his own. He would sort of go out and wander the crowds and be like, yeah, I'm that guy from that movie, but
yeah. And an interesting just thing to add on to that is it's funny. Like if you look at what their life, I saw a documentary on what their lifestyle was like back then when they were big. And like, man, like I think it was Anthony Michael Hall. He would literally just spend months and months and months in a 5-star hotel and just get room service every day and whatever he wanted. And a bunch of the group would just like go to the Limelight and just get drunk. And they would actually also go in sensory deprivation tanks just for the heck of it. And that's, I guess, yeah, when you're young and rich and famous, that's it gets to you, right? That's what you end up
McCarthy
doing.
writes in his book about like not having a place to live for a little time, so he just lived in this hotel, and he said like he would go hang out at the bar and like drink beer with Bob Seger and shit like that. So these kids got famous at what, like 22, 20, really young, and so it affected them, led to addiction and all that fun stuff that comes with the sort of like Lindsay Lohan existence of getting famous very young and being the subject of something like the Brat Pack sort of whatever you want to call that phenomenon.
And Demi Moore, who plays Jules, her character is a reflection of what was going on in her life. She had a pretty bad drug problem when she was cast in the movie. And Joel Schumacher was like, you have to leave. You're high. I can see that. And so she went to rehab, and then eventually she was able to be in the movie. So, yeah, it's interesting to see how you could see them in their characters. And that's an interesting thing for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so back to the movie. Billy's fucking up, not doing well. None of them really are doing well, but Billy's really not doing well. So then it cuts to, I believe this is when it cuts to Alec back at his apartment with Leslie. And this is the first time he's pressuring her to marry him. And they present it as, oh, he must really just be crazy about her, because when they show them first in the apartment, they're all lovey-dovey, they're all in agreement about future plans, they're putting things together in the apartment, so it looks like, oh, okay, they're living, that's cool. And Alex like, yeah, let's just get married, fuck it, who cares? And she is a little reluctant because they haven't been dating super long, and that's a really big commitment. And even when Jules comes over, and this is like one of the first cases where you could see Jules is just kind of like this reckless wanderlust. She comes in and she's venting to them about this guy, or her stepmother, or step monster, as she always refers to her as. And when they're talking, so Leslie and her are talking in private, and she's like, "Oh, Alec wants me to marry him, and he's gonna be a Republican now," and that's kind of where you see a tonal shift. And then Jules downs her vodka and takes her vodka too, and yeah, so we're kind of laying a little bit of the groundwork here. So Kirby is just hanging out, and then it shoots their apartment. So Kirby and Kevin both have a place together as well. And Kevin comes in, and off the bat, Kirby is no, I'm sorry. I think I have this reversed. I think Kirby walks in from his shift at the bar. He also works at the bar, by the way, St. Elmo's bar. So I think he comes home, and he immediately starts talking about Dale Biberman. Like, he is just grossly infatuated with this woman. And he's talking about like how there's only a few quintessential times in a man's life, and how he's sure that he's in love with her. And Kevin is just obviously very adamant in his world stance of love is just basically I forget how he refers to it, but basically just like a ploy to to create the need for divorce, to create the need for divorce lawyers, something like that. So, but Kirby is very, very much into this woman, and it gets into some pretty Wahlberg and Fear like vibes throughout the movie, but obviously like there's nothing violent on that end, but you can see the parallels. So anyway, Billy shows up, shit-faced, obviously, and he's like, "Hey, can I stay the night? My wife kicked me out," or he just couldn't stand being around her. What probably got kicked out. So this is now you can see the dynamic of the friendship. Like when Billy walks in, they kind of shrug it off as like, "Oh yeah, whatever, Billy," but you could kind of see that this has happened more than many times, and that it's just like kind of another nail in the coffin of his own life. So after that, we have a rather entertaining part of the movie, because Jules calls Kevin over to our apartment, which, by the way, from what I understand, it's like a relatively new place, and it's all decked out. It's all pink. She's got high-end art. She's got like a nice bar, a nice kitchen.
The whole wall is Billy Idol's face.
Yeah. The whole wall is Billy Idol's face, exactly. And you can tell that she may have borrowed some money for this, because she works a job, but she keeps taking advances on her salary, and you could tell she's a wreck financially, and she tries to basically leech off of people. So she calls them in, and they make a drink and whatever, and they have a conversation. Jules gets down on the couch, Kevin follows, and Jules is basically like, "Why did you never make a move on me? Out of all the guys in school, you were like the only one who never did." And Kevin is not really feeling the conversation and tries to segue out of it. And Jules basically accuses Kevin of being gay and says, "Oh, you have to meet my neighbor Ron. You have to meet him." And like this kind of becomes a recurring joke in the movie of, "Oh, hey, Ron is in the scene," because Jules thought Kevin was gay, and because Kevin keeps to himself, which we will reveal why he's so sheltered romantically, but he keeps to himself. So after that, so he walks out as this happens. Ron comes out of his apartment with a drink in his hand, and Jules is just like, "Oh, sorry, next time." And I love that part, because it's like, wow, how tone deaf in the scene are you, right? But then Kevin ends up going to Alec's apartment, and Kevin and Leslie are having a conversation about their future, what he thinks their relationship is like, because she is now she's starting to question their relationship, her relationship with Alex, not in a sense of how they mesh, like chemistry wise. I think she's just questioning his motives because she knows the kind of person he is, and it just seems like a rush to be wanting to get married that quickly. But then Alec comes home from work, presumably from work, but then you find out he buys Leslie this red nightgown that he wanted her to wear, and they he's like, why don't you go try it on? Leslie goes in the other room to try it on. This is where Alec confesses to his infidelity, and he says that the as he puts it, the blonde leggy saleswoman offered to model it for me. Next thing you know, we're doing it standing up in the dressing room. So this is now where you see Alec's true character. And so he believes that by pressuring Leslie into marrying him, that will force him to become faithful. And for many reasons, this irks Kevin. He doesn't outwardly admit to his animosity of the situation, but you can tell that he is not happy about it. So then,
I like when he like dabs his cigarette into the food that he's cooking.
It is something that happens that could be really overlooked, but it is just the right taste of spite, and it really sets the tone for how he feels about the situation. So Alec goes off in the room and to presumably fuck, and Kevin is left stirring the vegetables. So this has been quite a day for Kevin so far, right? So now we fast forward to Billy and Wendy, who now Billy is married, but you can also tell that Billy and Wendy have sort of this weird relationship where Billy is just kind of, you're not really certain most of the movie why he's really quote unquote dating her. You want to think it's because he likes her, but like you're not really sure because of who he is as a person. And Wendy just clearly cannot kick this habit of him, even though he literally put her life in jeopardy driving drunk.
I don't totally get the tone of their relationship for most of the movie. It's almost like they're like dating, but there's not like anything sexual going on there, but they don't really expand upon it or show them ever like dating. It's just like they were in a car and now he's at her house and blah blah blah.
I think
it's kind of a weird, like maybe there was a scene or two that got cut, but
no, I don't think it got cut. I think the point they're trying to make is Billy is somebody who is obviously a womanizer. He's very insecure with himself, and it kind of gets projected on a character like Wendy. It's somebody he figures he knows, she knows, she might trust him a little bit, just enough to let him in emotionally, and then he figures maybe I'll just keep her around and then one day it might pay off. But then sometimes you think like, well, is he trying to be genuine? And then
there's the air of like that he's using her, right? Because there's that one part, and I don't want to skip ahead too much, but like she like leaves money for him after they fight.
Yeah, I was gonna get into that. Yeah. But yeah, so basically they have a very weird dynamic. She knows that he's bad news, but she can't quit him. And that's what happens. They show them at Wendy's house, and Wendy comes from money, and her family her father mostly owns like this whole line of greeting card stores, and then like it's passed down through different family members. But she, like, her father throughout the movie is trying to encourage her to marry a guy who could take over one of the stores and live this like very cookie cutter life. Someone who is, always tying his tie right, polishing his shoes, got very, very white collar. And Billy is very much the opposite of that. So you can tell throughout the dinner scene, they're all sitting down and they're with the family. And Billy's just making like all these little quips. And you can tell he's already getting shit-faced. And then they cut to upstairs or the den, somewhere like that, where they're just in private. Billy pours them a drink, and this is where some of the intimacy comes that he's trying to force. And, they kiss. Wendy reveals she's a virgin. So I guess most of these relationships in this movie are relatively new, because it's like, I feel like Billy would have probably known that if it was for a while, because it seems like Billy is integrated into the friend group, but he's also kind of the outsider at the same time. So they're kissing and whatever, Billy's trying to tug at her clothes. And then when he lifts her dress up, he sees this girdle, and he flicks it up, then it smacks down, and he tries to make light of the situation because he thinks it's funny, but Wendy is not about it because she's insecure about the situation, and she's also kind of getting close to her last legs with Billy. She's kind of really, at this point, she's getting really tired of it, even though she still likes him. So you can see that come into play. So Wendy keeps insisting that they just remain friends, and that Billy might be trying to take advantage of her. And then that's kind of where they part ways for now. So then we have, excuse me, drink. Excuse me. So they cut back to St. Elmo's. You see some more of their chaos, all ordering drinks, all doing whatever, having very interesting conversations. Then you find out that Jules, I forget where in the movie this had happened. I think this scene already happened. You can see Jules at her job. She works at some financial institution, I believe. And that's when you find out that she keeps getting advances on her salary, and that they won't keep just giving it to her. And then at this point, it's revealed that Jules is having an affair with her boss, who is married, and is presumably just so that she can keep getting money, and not just from the company, but from him. And so this is when they start seeing that Jules has a problem, because now they see Jules doing coke. They see her going out all hours of the night. She's having an affair with her married boss. So things are really ramping up at this point. You can see that each member of the group, really, their characters are coming into themselves at this point. So after this, Billy he's actually playing at the bar. He plays saxophone, which I don't know. Did Rob Lowe actually learn? I don't think it's Rob Lowe, right? Because he's just an actor. I don't think it was him, right?
Yeah, he wrote a couple books, and I read one of them. I read his second book, which is sort of a proper memoir of his acting career. And I think that he eventually maybe took some lessons because Bill Clinton invited him to play or something, thinking that he actually did play in St. Elmo's Fire. But no, in the movie, it's totally fake.
Yeah, honestly, though, they do a pretty good job on the ADR, because it looks like he could. He
sells it well.
He does.
The editing's really great, and he's sweating his ass off
like a musician does.
Yeah,
which is crazy too, because he won a Razzie for he was nominated and won a Razzie for his acting in that movie, which I really didn't think was that bad. I don't really know why it was like people got that that sensibility that it was terrible, but.
He came from the modeling world, so he didn't take acting lessons until 1992 or something for The Stand, where he had to play a mute, deaf mute character or something. But so prior to that, he was a pretty face, and he kind of stumbled his way through a bunch of big 80s roles, with the Outsiders and stuff. So
yeah,
he. But he does a good job, he's very charismatic.
Yeah.
I thought he was fine.
He really sells it for sure. So as he's playing, you see, because I don't think you see Billy's wife until this point. So you see a woman walk in with a guy, and the friends at the table are starting to freak. They're like, oh no, like we know what's gonna happen. And then you find out it's Billy's wife because he, as he's playing, he looks over at them, and of course just at the moment that they're kissing, and and Billy's like, let go of my wife, whatever. And then they have like a drag out brawl, and it ends up being taken outside, and Billy's yelling at the guy, Billy's yelling at his wife yelling at Billy, and then in like the most ridiculous turn of events, after they're shouting at each other, the people who are holding on to them respectively let go, and then they end up kissing and hugging, and then the rest of the group's just like, yeah, it's just another day. And that kind of really plays into his emotional insecurity too, because it's like you can tell no matter what it is, Billy cannot let go. He can't let go of his past at college. He can't let go of the relationships he has, as long as they're benefiting him, right? So that's why he's just like so emotionally insecure, and like this is really prime evidence of that.
He was a god in his fraternity, and now he can't even hold on to a job. So he's
he's getting a dose of real life, and he cannot handle it. So he regresses into his past behaviors because that's what he's comfortable with. So after this, the girls, specifically Leslie and Wendy. Well, first, Leslie and Jules go to where Wendy's retiring, where Wendy is working at. She works for like social services. So sometimes she's in the office, sometimes she's volunteering at the soup kitchen. So they go to where Wendy's working, and Leslie and Wendy orchestrated this so that they thought Jules was going to go because they're worried about Wendy, but they're actually worried about Jules because, like I was saying earlier, Jules is really going off the rails now. She's doing cocaine all the time. She's not eating, which, by the way, they're all given plates of food in this scene. She doesn't touch a bite because you can tell she's skiing, and she's just involved in very bad relationships. And so they're trying to sit her down and explain this. But of course, anyone who's in that situation never sees it as a problem. So she's like, what do you mean reckless spending? What do you mean drugs? What do you mean an affair? Everything's under control. And the way Jules presents herself, you'd almost be inclined to believe her if you were an outsider. But you know what's actually going on. You can tell that shit's gonna really fall apart. So Kirby sets up a date with Dale. Yes, back to Kirby. And he is such a maniac, he ends up picking like one of the fanciest restaurants in the area and gets there at like, I think 11 or 10 or 11 in the morning. He's like, sir, we're not open yet. And he's just like, yeah, I have a reservation. Don't care. I want this table. And so he literally just stays there until the date with Dale. And then Dale gets a work call because she works at the hospital. And so she has to go. And because of this, and then a future meeting when Kirby actually ends up going to Dale's, he finds out that, it must be about money, right? Like, that's what you're into. So Kirby ends up, well, first I think it's Billy that gets a job with Mr. Kim, and then
for a hot minute,
and then gets caught in his
hot tub with a lady
in his tub, and then Kirby ends up taking a job with Mr. Kim, who's just a wealthy Korean business guy. He's not.
I think they say he's a gangster.
Yeah, other than it's kind of like implied he's a gangster. And of course the hilarious miscasting of that role, but we won't touch on that any further. So after that, he decides, hey, I'm gonna throw a party to impress Dale. So he figures, well, Mr. Kim's going away. I have the mansion to myself. I guess I'm just going to do this. So he ends up throwing this party, which, of course, Dale doesn't show up to. And we'll reveal why in a little bit. But it's at this party, a couple things happen. So this is when Wendy said that her and Billy should just be friends. So Wendy shows up with this guy, I think his name is Howard or something.
Yeah, Howie. Yep.
Yeah, Howie. Just some Jewish kid who her parents just tried to set her up with and thought he'd be a good fit to run their greeting card business. And then throughout the party, Billy tries to confront her outside having a cigarette, and you can tell that she wants nothing to do with him anymore, and that's when it just basically dissipates. And then back in the house, you see quite a conversation unfold into a pretty big fight where Alec, out of nowhere, without talking to Leslie about it, announces his engagement to Leslie. Now, naturally, that's fucked up because you're just putting someone on the spot by doing that. It's like a food court mall proposal, right? It's like, oh well, yeah, I gotta say no in front of all these people. So
the implication.
Oh God, no. So they go into the kitchen and have a private conversation, and obviously they're both upset about the result of this. And it's at this point shit really hits the fan because Leslie starts accusing him of infidelity. She doesn't know for sure, but she knows that he's been acting weird. And Alec, instead of trying to play this calm and collectively, says, "What did Kevin tell you?" And right there, you can see that it was a trap, and he just admitted to being unfaithful. So Alec, in a fit of rage, knowing that he was just caught, decides to take out his anger on Kevin and scream at him and ask him, "What did you tell her? What did you tell her?" And just straight up punches him in the face, and he goes down. And this is basically where shit really goes awry, because then Alec's like, "I want you out of the apartment. You're getting out." And so that relationship is basically over. And a lot of shit is happening now. And it goes from 0 to 100 real quick. So the two break up, and then we get to a scene that is pretty uncomfortable to watch. We have Billy in the car with Jules. Jules is dropping off Billy at his house, presumably because he's fucked up. And Jules is in a really bad spot mentally because at this point, her stepmother, she's really fucked with that situation. She's recklessly spending, doing drugs. She's not in a good place, and it's finally starting to get to her. And so she's just trying to confide in Billy to have a conversation and try to be a friend. But Billy sees this as an opportunity to just get in a quickie and goes so far as to literally take her car keys and put them in his pants and say, "Come get them." And then they get into a fight, and she pushes him out of the car and says, "I really needed a friend tonight." And then this is when you see the porch light come on, and it's his wife with holding his kid, and really no words are even exchanged. She just goes back in the house and shuts the lights. And it's at this point you can tell Billy is just trying to cling on to any last emotional attachment he has. First it was Wendy, then it was Jules, and now it's like,
was this before or after he visited his college?
I think this was
just before,
right before.
Okay.
So yeah, so Billy ends up going back to Georgetown, and a bunch of kids near his frat see him, And they're like, oh shit, it's Billy Hicks. Yo, what up? And so they're playing football and talking about old times. And this scene actually almost makes you feel bad for Billy, because he sits down with one of the frat brothers and he's like, hey, so yeah, I mean, I think Billy brings it up. He's like, hey man, is there like anything I can do on this campus? I would love to work here, whatever, because he's obviously like not over being at college. He said, oh yeah, man, we really need a guy to give us a good drug hookup. And he laughs it off, but Billy's like actually hurt by it because he so desperately wants to cling on to anything that's familiar and comfortable, and he knows he has no shot of that. And like that's when he sits down with his wife, tries to reconcile all the damage, say, I'm gonna quit drinking, I'm gonna be a father, no more fucking around on you, whatever. And obviously this kind of falls on deaf ears.
Well, she mentions that she was contacted by the person that she was dating before Billy, and he's offered to come into her life and marry her and take care of her child. And it prompts Billy to be like, I'll change. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, because he knows that this wife is his
last chance. Basically.
Right, he knows that his wife is the only last emotional attachment he has in this world. And so he really he's like trying to make an effort, but then you can tell it's not happening. So after that, Kirby, rather, it's so funny. He's during the party, he's trying to angrily call her roommate, the hospital, like, where's Dale Bieberman? And then it's revealed, and then he drives during his party to Dale's house and confronts her roommate. And she reveals that she's at a cabin with her boyfriend, like a ski lodge with her boyfriend. Mm-hmm. And that's when Kirby just fucking goes off the rails, and he takes his car up to see her. And it's a really bad snowstorm. And once he arrives at the snow lodge, he sees her come out, but then he sees her boyfriend come out. And you could see in his eyes the resentment. You're just like, who the fuck are you? That's my girl, dude. It's like, all right.
I think he tries to run away, and his like the car is stuck in the snow. I actually think it might be it might not be his car. I think it was Wendy's
it was
car that she got for dating that other guy. Right?
It was Wendy's car. Wendy's new car that she took because her dad was trying to bribe her, basically. So yeah, he throws a tantrum basically. And he tries to run away, and he like slips in the snow, and he tries to drive off, but his car is stuck in the snow. And he's just like, come on, Kirby, come on in. You're going to freeze to death. I'll freeze. I'll stay in the car. And then he eventually reluctantly agrees to come into the ski lodge and tries to figure out like, why him? Why didn't you give me a chance? That part isn't really delved into too much. And obviously, like, it doesn't really need much explaining, because you could just tell that he's psychotic. Like he built this relationship up in his head. So it's not like they were serious, then they broke up, then she like dated one of his best friends, and he's questioning what happened. Why did we get here? He's literally just grossly infatuated with her.
Your favorite line earlier in the movie, he storms into her party. She goes like, what are you doing here? And he goes like, I'm obsessed. Thank you.
Yeah, he says, I'm a little obsessed. Thank you very much. And that's the delivery of that line is fantastic. So then the next morning, they're ready to leave the lodge. Dale's boyfriend gets the car unstuck. And Dale's like, hey, listen, I'm flattered that you're so into me, but like, this just isn't a thing. And then this part is so weird. The guy suggests, let me take a photo of you two. So this almost seemed like a plot device to get the kiss, because like, why would he? Was that
He's
like a
this
spiteful?
Is the biggest moment in your life up to this point. Let's commemorate it with a Polaroid.
Right, I think it was like a condescending action.
I'm not sure. It was weird.
But either way, this is where you see, like, he goes to grab the camera, and then Dale gives him a kiss on the cheek, like, oh, I'm flattered, and he just grabs her and just straight up makes out with her for a couple seconds. And then he's real cheery and chummy now, and he puts his arm around her for the picture, and he's smiling, and oh my god, I love this part. He just gives it to her, like, oh yeah, here's what you're missing, by the way, like, joke's on you, and just looks at the guy, says later, dude, and then just drives off. And that's the end of Kirby's arc. And like, it's so interesting to me the way they approach that, because it's like not that typical ending of, oh, you're right, maybe you are the one. They make it damn clear that he is just being fucking weird, and like, infatuation doesn't always get you everywhere. So Kirby drives off. Then we fast forward to Leslie going to Kevin's apartment. And this is the part of the movie where you ask yourself, how could shit get any worse between the friend group? And then it happens.
Maybe if the bar catches on fire, who would have thought?
Maybe the bar, maybe St. Grover's fire happens.
Yeah.
So Leslie and Kevin are talking, and they start drinking. Leslie's really upset, rightfully so. And she's asking Kevin, what do you think of our relationship as an outsider? And this is when he's talking about how, how he feels about love and whatever, and how he feels about her. And then Kevin goes to, I think, grab another drink or something like that. And then this is when Leslie finds a stack of photographs of just her. And this is when it really clicks. Unless you were asleep the whole movie, you could basically tell Kevin was in love with her. But like, this is where you really are like, whoa.
Well, they lead you on to believe that he could be in love with Alec as well. You know what I mean? They don't make it like they try to trick you a little bit. You know what I mean? So
there's a couple characters that assume that he's gay because he hasn't had sex for a long time. Like, there's the sex worker that he talks to on the street and has the cute, rapport with, and she says something like, "I just assumed you were gay" or something like that. And so, and that's why you never.
Why don't you ever ask if I want to date?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and that was played by Anna Marie Horsford, who was Craig's mom in the Friday series, which I thought was cool because like, she was young in that movie. Thinking about it more, that is true. They do kind of keep it a little under wraps. You could, like, after some Columbo-esque investigation, you could like figure it out. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
He says, I'm in love with somebody, but they don't have any idea. He does.
Right. And then the sex worker asks if it's a guy or a girl. He's like, it's a secret. And she's like, I'm great with secrets, or something along those lines. So it's like they really try to keep you guessing throughout the movie. So it was a cool twist to see that he was in love with her the whole time. But it was like the point in the movie where it was like, whoa, because
this is when like shit can't be rewind. Like they end up having sex, and then afterwards, Alec. So earlier in the movie, Kevin gave Alec a key to his apartment because Alec wanted to continue his infidelity and needed a place to bring girls back. And so he's like, "Hey, please have a key." And so it's because of this, y'all thought it was a MacGuffin, but it was very much needed for this part. So Alec starts opening the door because he has the key, and Kevin is in bed with Leslie, and obviously Alec does not know Leslie is here. So Alec is talking to Kevin. It's like, I need to know, I believe you if you say you didn't tell her about the other woman, but like blah, blah, blah. And he's obviously like just ranting. And then Kevin goes out to try to throw water, defuse the situation, and get him out of the apartment before he realizes Leslie's there. And as Alec is about to leave, and he's like, "Oh, you got someone in there? Was it the fat chick from the party?" And then Leslie comes out from the bedroom and says, "It wasn't the fat chick from the party." And this is just where you assume Alec is just going to hit him with unbridled rage, but he's in such shock that he can't process it. He's like, there's no way this is happening. and then he just leaves in an angry fit. And that just further drives the stake between the friendship. And that's when Alec and Leslie also argue and all that real fun stuff. So Brian mentioned Wendy's car earlier, which she got from her father kind of as a bribe to marry Howie, but she's very insistent on wanting to be independent. So she sits down with him at, looks like a Jewish deli or something, and they're just having a conversation about how she feels that she wants to be on her own and she doesn't want the path that her family wants. And that's kind of great for a character like her, because you could tell that growing up, she must have been coddled. She must have been told what she has to do. And now she wants to grow up and get out. And she, like, as far as character development goes, she is arguably the most responsible character. So, I mean, her only vice is just going back to Billy, but like, then she cuts ties anyway. So obviously her father's not too happy, but you know, that's kind of where she really says, nope, I'm going to split ties now. So then you find out Jules has been lying to her friends about still having her job, because she was actually fired a couple weeks back, and she's now behind on a bunch of credit card payments, and all of her possessions have been seized from her apartment. And this is where it gets real dark, because Jules then attempts to commit suicide by leaving her windows open, blocking all entry to the apartment and trying to freeze to death. And this is where Alec gets called to come over by Leslie, but obviously Alec is still harboring that animosity with her and Kevin, but ultimately he understands that friendship, he wants to be there. But then Kevin comes along with Kirby, and when they're trying to go up the fire escape route, Alec snaps and decides that this would be a good opportunity to really threaten or possibly kill Kevin. So he holds him over the fire escape. He dangles him over the fire escape while their friend is freezing to death. So you can tell that Alec is a very selfish character, other than all the infidelity and all the other acts. So, and in this moment, you're not quite sure what's going to happen. And then the situation finally diffuses. They're grabbed apart. And then they end up working together to try to bust her out. You know, they try to use a blowtorch on the window, and then in an act of just pure comedic genius, Billy tries to take a fire extinguisher and ram the door by getting a running start. And it's at this moment that Jules finally breaks down, unlocks the door. And so, of course, he just flies on in like it's an Abbott and Costello thing, and he just falls to the ground.
I think what's his name comes out of the other part, but he's like, "What's going on?" If I remember
Ron.
correctly.
Ron. Yeah, Ron does.
What's going on over there?
Yeah. So it's at this point where Billy finally becomes the friend that she wanted, and they start talking about how they're very much the same person in most regards, and how, oh my God, I can't even hold a job. Like, Billy's last job was working at a gas station. Like, that's where Kirby picks him up, because he doesn't know what else he can do, and he can't ever hold a job. So he's like, listen, I totally understand. We're all screwed. And this is where the title of the movie comes into play, because he starts referencing St. Elmo's fire, which is a weather phenomenon. And he's talking about it and making jokes, trying to be lighthearted, but also serious in tone. And that's when Jules kind of takes a deep breath and realizes everything's going to be okay. Life is fucking rough right now, but we'll all get through it. So after this, some time passes, and then you see resolve in the group. You see Wendy moves in her own place, but then you find out that Billy actually decided to concede to his wife's demands and say, listen, you guys would be better off without me. go marry the other guy. So they file for divorce, and Billy announces he's going to move to New York, and that's when the two actually have sex. Fairly awkward.
He asked for a
present.
going away present.
Going away present, yeah. But so that happens. So then the final scene is them at the bus station, and they all gather to say bye to Billy, because for so long they've always been this tight-knit group of 7, and now someone's leaving, so they're gonna all have to move on. And they all say goodbye to Billy, and Billy gets on the bus, goes off, and then there's a moment where you think that Alec and Leslie are gonna reconcile, because Billy's like, don't let her go, or something similar to that. But then Leslie talks with him and Kevin and says, I need to be alone. I don't want to really date anyone. I need to figure out my own life. Can we just be friends? And that's when things finally go back to normal, and they want to like meet up for brunch. But they decide to not go to St. Elmo's. They want to go to Houlihan's instead, which, okay, weird flex, like Houlihan's is all right. But it's actually significant that they do that, because this is quite literally the representation of coming of age. This is them saying, we don't want to be where all these hooligans are. We want to be a tight-knit group. We want to work on ourselves, and we want to actually become adults now. So they decide to pick a different restaurant and effectively abandon the hangout where all this debauchery took place. So that is the plot of the movie. Pretty interesting. On paper, it seems wild, and then you watch it and you realize it's even wilder. But one thing I do want to touch on, one of the reasons I love the movie, is because it does a really good job at portraying that realism of a group of kids who just left college and they're trying to figure shit out. You know, most movies, especially from this era, always try to paint the happily ever after picture, like guy gets the girl and everything's right in the world. And this movie, although shows real growth and development in the characters, doesn't actually set out for any other resolve other than that. So what I really like about this movie is like, okay, this is life. Bad shit happened, we move on. There's no happily ever after. Like, we're still gonna have trials and tribulations, but at least we know a little bit better about who we are and what we don't want. And what they don't want is to revert to their past. So I think that the way they handle this movie is very realistic for a bunch of kids that are just trying to find their way. And at least that's like how I feel personally.
It's sort of a Rorschach test, right? Like if you watch it at different periods of your life, like sort of like The Graduate or what have you. Like I think I saw it when I was maybe like 18, 19. I saw it when I was like 25, and now I'm watching it at 31, almost 32, and you really sort of get different things out of it when you come back to it over the years. And it's like the performances are good, but so much of it is sort of like psychology happening sort of as
Sure.
metaphor, and like different characters sort of beginning as stereotypes, but not just being that, where like the Breakfast Club might be like, oh, here's the jock and here's the nerd, and we're self-aware about it. But like this movie is like, we'll take that as a starting point, and then kind of like tease out the psychology of Alec says aloud and consciously that like, I want to get married so that then I'll be faithful and I'll be an adult, then I'll be good. But on the unconscious level, we see him like really controlling her and coercing her at every step, and also like that idea that the people who cheat are always like the ones who are suspicious and paranoid, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like a smarter movie than like if you watch it, you see like sort of the criticisms that people have. It's like, oh, these are like rich, privileged white kids who are spoiled, and like,
yeah.
but like but the psychology of it is brilliant. And like, when we see, Estevez doing his whole like psychotic stalker thing, like, I think that like young men at 17, they have crazy thoughts, but like if you're, if you're what's the word, sort of socialized to any significant degree, you don't act on them, you don't like,
Yeah.
obsess and chase down, but like, um guys will be like, hey man, like you should talk to like such and such girl's friend and like find out like if she's mad at me or find, like, like guys have like idiot thoughts, and we sort of see young people's psychology sort of dialed up to 11 in this movie, and kind of see a lot of like honesty and truth that maybe Joel Schumacher himself probably didn't like looking at probably after the fact, and so he went and made a vampire movie so he could kind of like hide behind
Yeah.
genre and camp.
Yeah.
But like, I think people look at this movie and they want to kind of write it off because it's like, oh, look how like melodramatic and cringe it is, but there's something really honest happening with the yeah, we have like Demi Moore doing, sort of the Robert Downey Jr. and Less Than Zero thing with like drugs are bad and addiction is destroying your life. And then you have Rob Lowe kind of be like a philandering fuck up who can't hold down a job. But like all these characters are like living in these different fantasy worlds and like projecting things onto other people and kind of, sort of avoiding the reality of adulthood that lies ahead. And it's, yeah, I think there's a lot of merit to that, the way that the characters are, the psychological motivations behind it all.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's easy for people to see this on the surface level and just think, oh, yeah, it's just a preppy coming of age story. But tell me how many 80s coming of age stories you've seen that involve childhood trauma, abuse, bad drug addiction, and infidelity out the fucking ass. Like, it really wasn't, because I think like a lot of the coming of age stories in the 80s were from adolescence to teenager, whereas this one is like from late teens into early adulthood. And I think it's a real breath of fresh air when you're dealing with the subject matter, because you're not even fully developed at that age. And it's interesting, like you said earlier, how it's kind of Rorschach test every time like you've watched it in different periods of your life. Well, it's true. I mean, you can find and pick apart lessons from pretty much everything, because no matter how old you get, there's like always learning to do, there's always growing to do. And I think the reflection of these characters really is like, okay, well, never take for granted who you keep in your circle, and no matter how many mistakes you make, having that support system and growing from it is all that matters, right? Like, we all fuck up, we all make mistakes, but as long as you know what you're doing, right? That's kind of the defining line there. But yeah, this movie does a lot of things that a lot of people don't talk about, and it's much appreciated.
It kind of has the nerve to go there where, John Hughes is a genius and like Ferris Bueller is like sort of my favorite version of this kind of movie. But like, yeah, a lot of that stuff is like either done through like implication or innuendo. And, it doesn't kind of have the nerve to kind of, like a lot of times if something is going to be tackled that's sort of like a really hard topic, it's either Nightmare on Elm Street doing it through like horror, or it's like Less Than Zero doing it with like a nice like sort of neon veneer over it to kind of make it like after school specialize it or whatever, make it kind of commercial. And but yeah, St. Elmo's Fire, it kind of takes like a pretty just sincere approach, kind of like that George Lucas with American Graffiti, or like Richard Linklater with like Dazed and Confused and Boyhood. Like occasionally these filmmakers are like, I'm going to show you what young people are actually like. Or maybe the movie 13, was very controversial. I imagine it was controversial probably because it told a lot of truth. I haven't actually seen 13, but these movies that are like, let's show young people as they actually are. They're not like level-headed, intelligent adults. They're kind of like little, I don't know. Young people can be really, really stupid or really monstrous, or just kind of like that whole, like how Billy is, where like, maybe Wendy sees like the good in him or whatever, but he's just like a total fuck up. And like Jules says, like, you break everyone's heart or whatever. I think that's kind of like that line is sort of the soul of the movie, where all these people are just sort of stumbling around through their lives and not worrying about like what dominoes they knock over. But yeah, I think there's any of us, we went to high school with men, and we heard the things that they said, or did, and yeah, I and I think in college, same thing. I think I went to like one college party, and I was just like, I never want to be one of these places ever again. Like, this is horrible. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, just the things that you like overhear, and come into contact with. It's like young people are kind of just self-centered, I think, right? Like, Billy doesn't give a shit about how his actions affect his wife or his kid or whatever.
Right.
And by the time he's ready to kind of like grow up and stop breaking people's hearts, his wife has already written him off, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting character study on most of, if not all of humanity. And there is kind of, like you said, that monstrosity, or the believed monstrosity of people who are dealing with things internally, but because you don't see them, it's almost kind of like the ostrich effect. If I don't see it, it's not there. And it's kind of like the that age old saying of like, don't judge a book by its cover. We all go through shit. So like, you gotta, even if you're in a place where it's like, oh, look at these preppy kids, whatever, they have everything. No, I mean, they came from fucked up backgrounds, and they're still dealing with their own respective issues. But yeah, it's great because it's not even really. It's honestly more of like a period piece in a way. It's like a very non-linear way of storytelling, because nothing really is in the grand scheme of it. It's not like anything's really getting resolved, and all the plot points are kind of just like, they're just used kind of to as developmental transition into their later characters. But like, everything else is kind of just slice of life in a way, plus the drama. And I appreciate that storytelling, instead of here's girl, here's guy, guy wants girl, girl doesn't know, guy wants her, he spends movie trying to get her, guy gets girl in the end, right? It's like very non-linear storytelling, because it's kind of just like you're living in the moment, and it's kind of reflective of how we all live, because it's like, if you have that infatuation, keep it legal, but you can have that infatuation, but then like life moves on, and then whatever. So it's
Yeah, the movie was co-written. It was co-written by Joel Schumacher, and who was the other writer? It was Joel Schumacher and Carl Kurlander. And when I was looking up stuff about the movie, like, apparently Carl Kurlander had based Kirby's arc of obsession on like an infatuation that he had in college as well, which is funny because I thought it was like Kirby's was like a little like too wild for me, like out of, it didn't seem like as realistic as some of the other plot lines in the movie. But if it was based off of that, maybe it was exaggerated a bit, but it was definitely like more of like a stalking situation.
Yeah, and I think, kind of to go back to what Alex said on how, you look at what other directors were doing at the time, and Joel just kind of said screw it and took his own liberties. I think with the character of Kirby, it is non-conventional to have this coming of age story and then have like this pseudo stalker character just kind of bumbling about and trying to get his way. But I almost appreciate that in a way, because it's like, well, it seems outlandish and surreal, but that shit happens all the time. And it's another coalescence of the theme of they're like living in the past, because he is very much living in the past, because he could very much be head over heels for Dale Beaverman. But like, at what point do you realize everyone has moved on? So should you. So I think it is kind of like a defense mechanism for him to cope for what he lost. And then it's him trying to gain a little piece of that back. I don't know if it's to the level of Billy, but it is certainly representative in his actions. So the Kirby arc is fucking wild, but I like that it's in the movie, albeit a little weird sometimes, for sure.
Yeah, it's a little outlandish.
Little outlandish. Yeah.
The movie has a very like slippery tone, kind of like the original Twin Peaks, like where it's just kind of like you don't know whether you're supposed to laugh or like, you know, cry or
Sure.
cringe or what sometimes, but I guess like life is a little like that, so it I don't know.
Absolutely.
It works. But yeah,
It's there's a lot of relatability in this movie, and it doesn't matter where you come from. You've probably either personally dealt or offhand dealt with all of these issues in your life, and fuck if they're preppy, right? Like it's an issue. It's all issues. Like that's just here. We're here. We're just trying to, you know, you might have your own St. Elmo's bar. I think we all do.
There's a lot of gender in the movie, you know, like, I mean, we see with Wendy's probably like the most well-off, like rich character. Like she has nothing to worry about in her life, like from a financial kind of, you know, she lives in like this mansion, you know, or whatever, right? And you know, her dad's like, oh, you're set for life, but it's like, is she though? It's like if she plays by his rules and if she marries the guy and goes down this path that he wants for her, and it's very kind of you know, that the whole that notion of financial abuse, basically, where like, you know, oh, you marry, you know, the wrong guy, then I'll cut you off and disown you, you know. So yeah, these are kind of like spoiled rich white kids, but like, yeah, there's a lot going on sort of under the surface with every character is kind of built on the scaffolding of like gender essentialism and societal expectations. Like I think Jules and Billy like are both like they're big fuck ups in their own way, but we see them want to like sort of nurture Jules and be like gentle with her about it, whereas like Billy, it's just like, well, he might as well, you know, kind of he ends up moving to New York by the end, and it's just like, what's going to become of him? Like we have no idea. Like we just kind
try
of
something different for a little while.
Yeah, it's and him leaving the group is really just a metaphor for something way bigger. It's him saying goodbye to his past, and for someone like Billy, you could argue Billy underwent the greatest character development, because he went from someone who was so cripplingly afraid of leaving his past and leaving those emotional attachments to, well, I'm going to pack my bags and move, you know, halfway across the country. So like for him to have that kind of transition and that kind of development, it's him breaking away from not only the bond of his friends, but the bond of his past, and him saying, okay, goodbye, good times, goodbye, bar. I gotta actually start doing life. And that's like something that's super commendable. You know, you see this fuck up and he's finally admitting to himself, hey, I got a problem. And he's realizing it at a young age. And so presumably he will carry on and make good decisions moving forward. Hopefully, that's what you hope for, because he showed a lot of growth just getting on that bus. But interesting interesting stuff definitely on his end. I think that he definitely grew the most as a character for sure.
Yeah. As like problematic as he is, and as much as like Rob Lowe doesn't quite have the muscles sometimes for the material, I think the script does the most work with him, as far as like him going to the frat house, and like you see like the hurt when they're like, oh, we thought, it'd be nice to have somebody to get us drugs, and he's just like devastated by that. He's like,
Right.
oh, I'm literally just like a piece of meat to these guys, just like I am to, all the women that I sleep with who don't love me, but I'm sleeping with them to feel something, or whatever it is that
Yeah.
he's
Yeah,
Um,
fucking A.
which by the way, I think that's what the whole thing with Wendy's character is. Like, I think she's sort of the person who gives him credit for like being a human being, and like a lot of other people sort of see him as just kind of like, well, that's Rob Lowe, he's like the pretty face who just kind of I don't know, there's something going on there where um the script really works with him, and then Schumacher spends a lot of time on developing his character, with the, even through the saxophone. The saxophone is kind of like Schumacher's like little pet motif that crops up in all his films, pretty much. Like,
Yeah.
like Jim
Yeah.
Carrey in the Number 13, decades later is like playing the saxophone and stuff. So there's
Yeah.
something going on there.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, the fact that the sax is kind of used as a way to show, hey, this is like one of the real positive outlets I have in my life. They really, the way they film it, it makes you think, oh, if he really sticks with the sax, maybe that'll give him the discipline that he so desperately needs. Maybe he'll land a gig at a cool jazz bar. Maybe it'll encourage him to go back to school or something. But then he hawks it to pay one of his bills, and
His phone
that,
bill. Yeah.
and then it kind of squashes from there. So very interesting use of that material. I think that was like another thing that most people didn't really catch, but I saw it more as like this bigger metaphor. Like, oh, well, I maybe want to change at one point, but I can't do that now. Like, I have real shit to worry about.
Yeah, I don't know. And there's the whole thing too with like Schumacher being sort of like this young, sort of hotshot director who's like got a lot of mentors, who are really important in Hollywood, and he's like sort of an openly gay director before there are a lot of like openly gay directors in Hollywood, I would think too, right? Like, so there's this whole thing where it's like, I'm picturing like a young gay man from probably like a slightly privileged background who's like, I want to make movies like in Hollywood, like, and your parents are going like, you're not gonna fucking make movies, and like, what,
No.
So I feel like if you look at the character of Billy, you can kind of see where that's working in that mode of like, oh, you want to be like a fucking like Hollywood artist or saxophone player. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? But yeah.
Yeah. And one other thing I did want to mention, because I saw an article a while ago about this movie, and they were talking about how it's a movie about terrible people, but it works because you see that they see the error in their ways and they're willing to grow at the end. And a thing that I kind of wanted to compare it against was the story of Rent, which was adapted by Jonathan Larson as a play that was based on Bohème, which was an old opera show way back in the day. And Rent is basically a bunch of kids adults living in New York, and they're trying to do whatever they can to make ends meet without actually giving in the hustle. Some of them got legitimate issues. Some of them are just, they don't want to work. And it's kind of like targeting the bohemian lifestyle. And that show is very much about terrible people that don't actually change. And it's a story that's so popularized in media that people tend to forget that, wow, they're actually fucking awful people. So I appreciate that, there are those differences here, like St. Elmo's Fire, even though we said this a couple times. All preppy spoiled kids and they do awful things, but at the end they learn. And that's really all it's about. Like, do whatever you want, but just learn from it,
Yeah, they're sympathetic, I mean, it's sort of they're believable enough and kind of like well developed with like a lot of details, like just seeing Andrew McCarthy like sort of drunk and playing the bongos or whatever and singing along to like Aretha Franklin or yeah, right, it's RESPCT. Yeah, I mean, it's like there's these aren't just sort of like cookie cutter, the jock and the nerd that,
right? Yeah.
You really like can be affectionate for these characters, even though like, yeah, they're horrible. Or and a lot of so I was curious and I looked on like Letterbox to see like what do like young people who are like just stumbling on this movie for whatever reason, like what are they saying about it? And like a lot of people compare Rob Lowe's character to Billy in Stranger Things, which like, yeah, his name's Billy, and yeah, he looks like Rob Lowe.
The 80s mullet, yeah.
Well, yeah. Billy, I'm sorry to cut you off, but Billy in Stranger Things is based off of Billy.
Totally. Yeah, explicitly.
Which is interesting. Yeah.
But, and he's like a total like horrible fuck up, but then like we slowly through like what by season 3 it's like, oh, he's got like a tragic backstory and we're supposed to like him now. And
right,
that's a very St. Elmo's Fire kind of arc that the Stranger Things Billy goes through.
Yeah, for sure.
Perfectly cast as like a young Rob Lowe lookalike too.
Oh yeah.
I think it's like over the course of season 3, if I remember correctly, because I think he's only introduced at the beginning of season 3, but it's like a quick progression of you see like, his past and why he is the way that he is.
Well, he's in 2, but he's like a horrible like bully, right?
Is he? I actually don't remember. I thought he was introduced in 3. I could definitely be wrong.
I think he's introduced in the season 2 premiere with because his sister is like a big part of it, and he's just sort of there as like the really shitty older brother.
I haven't watched Stranger Things since the finale of the last season, but I thought both of those characters were introduced in 3, but I could definitely be wrong, and it could be 2. I really don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah, nice tribute, to be honest, because it quite literally is Billy from the movie.
Yeah,
glad they chose that.
Definitely like an emblematic 80s movie, like kind of just like Lost Boys or Less Than Zero, where you've got the Brat Pack, but you've also got sort of like the politics and commercialism of the era kind of front and center. And yeah, I don't know, it's beautifully made for all the cringe and the mess and
yeah, there is cringe for sure, but yeah, but yeah, there's really something to love about this movie. No matter who you are, I think you could find something good in the movie. Something relatable, something good. It will definitely.
You're 100% right, by the way, Alex. It says seasons 2 and 3. I just am confusing it because I haven't watched it in so long. But yeah, apparently it's 2 to 3.
It's sort of like what's his name? Is it Steve? I think it's sort of the same deal where like he's in season 2 and he's like kind of a dickhead, and then like his character was really popular anyway because that's what young people who are fans of things do, right? Like sort of like Kylo Ren is Baby, that whole thing. Like Kylo Ren's never done anything wrong in his life. They did that with Billy. They did it with Steve. They're like, I like this character in spite of whatever because I'm a fan of it. And so in the season 3, they kind of develop him as like the sympathetic and kind of build an arc instead of just having him be like a racist bully. Yeah.
Can't wait for season 4 though.
I love that show.
Yeah. It's a great show.
David Harbour, especially, is like
Oh God,
he's so good.
Chef's kiss. Yeah, that's pretty much all I can say about the movie. I love it. I've always loved it. I've been watching it for many years, and there's something I find new in it every time, and that's something special, I think. And I think that anyone, no matter if you're into comedies, dramas, romance, I think give it a shot. I will say, even if you don't love it, there's good in it. There's a lot of good, and especially in an era where there's so many movies that are just fluff pieces. This one really stands out as just a real experience, and
Yeah, I
that's
mean, never watching it before, I definitely enjoyed it.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's some real, there's some really good character work there. Like I like Andrew McCarthy's development over the course of the movie. I think Ali Sheedy does a really good job too. I think she's really the only one in the movie, her character, without like a very toxic trait. I think like everybody else in the movie has like a fatal flaw about their character, and she's really the only one that I don't remember at least her having like some kind of crutch or anything like that. I mean, she relied on Judd Nelson's character for having an apartment, for like a place to live, but other than that, I mean, she was able to break away from the relationships that she felt were toxic, and everybody else had that one thing that was holding them up, whether it was drugs or money or infatuation or something like that. So there's some really cool dynamics between all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not have said it better myself. Fucking great movie. That's all I'm gonna say. Fucking great. I'm just gonna cut out that last 2 hours and just keep that part in. Just fucking great movie.
You meant to put on Norbit. I don't know how we ended up watching this movie.
Yeah, originally I was gonna do Norbit, but I'm surprised we haven't done a Norbit episode.
I do think it's kind of crazy that it has a 35 Metascore, this movie. Like that's like the reviews are like really spread out on it. I mean,
it's a very it's the definition of a mixed movie.
Yeah. It's wild. I think it's I think like it holds well for what it is. I definitely enjoyed watching it, and even rewatching it just to try to fully get all those character moments. I still think it was definitely still fun to watch. I think that I think it's endearing, like how close they all are as friends, even if they kind of fall out towards the end of the movie and then reconcile. Like I think just going between this person, and flipping the script to this person, like they all seem like just the best of friends for it's cool that they it's cool how they develop those relationships over the course of the movie.
Yeah, there's really that relatability, and there is a charm to it. I will say, when I watch the movie, it's like a good fever dream, if that makes sense. It's like whimsical in a sense. It's almost like it's not happening, but it is. It's a really interesting phenomenon, and I can't really describe it other than that. But there's something real feel good about it for me. Even if it deals with dark issues, it just makes me feel good. It's like magical in a way. It's like, is this a movie? Did this really happen? But yeah, it's very strange feeling, but it's how I feel for sure.
No fire though.
No fire. Hopefully in the supposed sequel series I heard they were doing.
St. Elmo's tragic earthquake.
Yeah, St. Elmo's even bigger fire. No, I heard a couple years ago. I don't know if they're still moving forward with it, but they're doing a series.
Are they really?
Yeah, they're adapting it into a TV show. I'm not sure where it stands right now. I heard it like 2 or 3 years ago, but that would be pretty interesting to see. I'd be curious to see that.
Let's see. It was in the works at NBC 2 years ago.
Okay. So maybe they're working on it and then COVID happened or something.
I have no idea. Yeah,
interesting.
I think that's the last update I see. August of 2019. That was It was in the works as a TV series adaptation.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that. I mean, you definitely have to. I wouldn't want them to just like try to do the same plot. Like they definitely would have to take it to a level where there's those parallels, but then also try not to modernize it too much, which
It'll be
would
like
be difficult to
Ghostbusters.
do because like we live in 2021 now. But I'd be curious. Check it out.
It's gonna be like Ghostbusters, where they're all gonna be like legendary, and it's like you were the guy that used to sit at this bar and drink and was crazy, and they'd make like little Rob Lowe would just be sitting there in the back making a little cameo.
Yeah, I would imagine things like that. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that was St. Elmo's Fire, and I'm real glad we got to do this episode because it's a movie I never really can talk about with people because most people haven't even seen it or heard of it. And like, what are you talking about? Oh, do you mean The Breakfast Club or Ferris Bueller's Day Off? It's like, no, it's a hidden gem. It was stuck in the catacombs of cinema for a while, and then we had to dig it out. But
not sponsored, but open to it. But if you're looking to check it out, you can sign up for a free 7-day Stars trial attached to your Amazon account, and if you cancel within the 7 days, you're basically watching it for free. So that's a pro tip
true.
if you're looking to watch it.
It used to be on Hulu, but they took it off a little while ago. So yeah, you can watch it on there if you're so inclined. You could also buy the movie. I think it's like $10, like the DVD, or not, probably less than $10, but Blu-ray is like 12, I think. But yeah, I would say like everyone give this a shot. If you hate it, Brian will personally Venmo you $50.
That's false. Didn't agree to
Okay,
this.
well, don't make me a fool.
Oh,
So yeah, so I was saying Almost Fire. Thank you again, boys, for chatting about this movie with me. It's a very special.
Before you guys go, I have a question for you.
Sure.
What is the meaning of life?
Dale Bieberman.
Okay, got it.
By the way, does anyone else
Booga
like
booga.
saying Dale Bieberman, or is
It
that
has
just me?
it has a twang to it.
It does. Bieberman. Like it's
Dale Bieberman.
It's such an interesting name. I don't know. I like saying it. Anyway, so this has been the Silver Screen Fiends podcast. I've been your host, Sam, and I've been joined by my good friends Brian Garfinkel and Alex Kane. Why don't you go plug your stuff now? Where can the internet find you guys?
Alex, you want to go first?
I'm on Twitter at Alex J Kane, Kane. And yeah, you can find me at usatoday.com or reviewed.com or various other places.
And I stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/Brinkle, BR1NKL. Open a lot of Pokemon cards, play a bunch of video games terribly, and have fun there.
They are both good at what they do, respectively. Yeah, so another edition of Silver Screen Fiends down the toilet. But I'm happy to report that these boys will be back. We're going to do a series of a couple episodes, so this will not be the last time you see them or hear them. Whatever. So wherever you are in the world, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. You have to go home, but you can't stay here. Love you. Bye.